Sometimes the difference between poverty and abundance is not a wall, but a door that most people never notice. Elias grew up in a crowded neighborhood where every morning sounded the same: doors slamming, people rushing, and arguments echoing through cracked walls. In his world, money was always a visitor who never stayed long. His father used to say, "Life is hard, son. Some people are born to struggle. We just survive." Elias believed that until the day everything changed. One afternoon, while helping an elderly bookseller carry boxes into his tiny shop, Elias noticed a dusty framed quote hanging on the wall. "Poverty begins in the mind long before it reaches the pocket." The words struck him like lightning. The bookseller, an old man with sharp eyes, saw the confusion on Elias's face and said quietly, "Most people think they are trapped because the world is unfair, but the real trap is inside their thinking. You want to know why the poor stay poor?" Elias nodded slowly, unsure. The old man leaned closer. "Because they ask the wrong questions." Elias frowned. "The wrong questions?" The bookseller nodded. "There are two questions that keep people poor their whole lives. The first is, why is life so unfair to me? The second is, who is supposed to help me?" Elias felt a sting in his chest. Those were the very questions he had been asking for years. The old man continued, "When you ask those questions, you give away your power. You become a victim of your circumstances instead of the creator of your future." He handed Elias a small, empty notebook. "From today, I want you to ask new questions. What can I learn? And what can I do differently?" These two questions open doors that most people never see. Elias stared at the notebook. It looked simple, ordinary, but something inside him whispered that it might someday become the most valuable thing he owned. He didn't know what to write yet, but he knew one thing: his thinking had just begun to change. That evening, Elias sat alone on his small balcony, the notebook open on his lap. He still didn't know what to write. Then the old man's words echoed in his mind. "What can I learn?" Elias looked around his neighborhood, people complaining, blaming luck, waiting for miracles. He suddenly realized something. He had been doing the same thing his whole life. So, he wrote his first sentence, "I am responsible for my future." It was simple, but it felt like a new beginning. When he closed the notebook, he didn't know how he would change his life, only that he finally believed he could. The next morning, Elias returned to the bookshop. The old man noticed something immediately. "You look different," he said. Elias nodded. "I wrote something yesterday, my first lesson." "What did you write?" the old man asked. He opened the notebook and read softly, "I am responsible for my future." A small smile appeared on the old man's face. "Good. Most people blame the world. The moment you stop blaming, your life begins to move." Elias felt a quiet fire inside him. For the first time, he wasn't waiting for change. He wanted to create it. As they walked through the shop, the old man pointed to a group of customers arguing loudly outside. "Do you know why they never move forward, Elias?" he asked. He shook his head. "They spend all their energy complaining," the old man said. "And complaining is the most expensive habit of the poor." "Expensive?" Elias repeated. "Yes," the old man replied. "Because every minute you complain is a minute you don't learn, don't improve, don't build." Elias watched the men shouting in the street,
and he suddenly saw himself among them. Not anymore, he thought.
Later that day, the old man placed 3 old books on the counter. "Choose one," he told Elias. Elias looked confused. "What are they about?" The old man smiled. "Opportunity, discipline, and courage." Elias hesitated, then picked the smallest one, discipline. "Interesting choice," the old man said. "Most people want opportunity first, but without discipline, opportunity dies in your hands." Elias opened his notebook and wrote, "Discipline creates the path. Opportunity walks on it." For the first time, he felt like he was building something inside himself, a new foundation. Elias returned home with the small book on discipline. Instead of going to sleep, he read the first page. It said, "Wealth is not built by big actions, but by small actions repeated." Elias closed the book slowly. All his life, he had waited for one big opportunity, one miracle, one lucky moment. But this line told him something different. Rich people don't wait, they build habits. So he wrote in his notebook, one small improvement every day. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt simple, almost too simple. But deep inside, Elias sensed that this small idea was the beginning of a completely different life. The next morning, Elias woke up earlier than usual, just 30 minutes earlier, but it felt like a victory. He opened the discipline book again and read, "Success belongs to the consistent, not the talented." He smiled softly. He wasn't the most talented, but consistency. Maybe he could learn that. Before leaving the house, he wrote a single line in his notebook. "Repeat what matters." It was a small act, but it marked something new in his life. A commitment to show up every day, even when no one is watching. When Elias arrived at the bookshop, the old man asked him casually, "Tell me, Elias, what did you repeat today?" Elias answered, "I woke up early. I read a little. I wrote one sentence." The old man nodded slowly. "That is why most people stay poor. They wait for a big change, but they ignore small daily actions. Wealth begins when you start doing what others avoid." Elias absorbed every word. He suddenly realized something simple but powerful. Rich people don't have different opportunities. They have different habits. He wrote in his notebook, "Small actions, big direction." And for the first time, he felt himself moving toward that direction. That night, Elias stood in front of the small, cracked mirror in his room. He looked at himself carefully, really looked. He saw a young man who had spent years blaming luck, waiting for change, hoping someone else would open the door for him. But now he whispered to his reflection, "No more waiting." He opened his notebook and wrote, "If nothing changes in me, nothing will change for me." It was the clearest truth he had ever written. For the first time, Elias felt proud, not of what he had achieved, but of who he was starting to become. The next day, a wealthy merchant entered the bookshop. His clothes were clean, his movements calm, his eyes focused. Elias watched him carefully. After buying a few books, the merchant smiled at the old man and said, "As always, I invest in knowledge first. Money comes later." Elias felt those words hit him deeply. When the merchant left, the old man said, "Did you hear that, Elias? Rich people don't chase money. They chase skills, discipline, and understanding. Money follows them because they grow." Elias immediately wrote in his notebook, "Grow first, earn later." For the first time, he understood wealth is a result,
not a starting point. That evening, Elias sat in the bookshop after closing time. The old man placed a single coin on the table. He said, "This is how most people see money." Elias looked at the coin. Just a coin. The old man shook his head. "No, it is a tool. The poor see money as something to spend. The rich see money as something to use." He slid the coin toward Elias. "Spend it, and it disappears. Use it wisely, and it grows." Elias stared at the coin in silence. It was the first time he felt the weight, not of money, but of choices. He wrote in his notebook, "Don't spend, build." And for the first time, he felt himself stepping out of the mindset he had grown up with. The next morning, Elias returned the coin to the old man. "I don't want to spend it. I want to grow it." The old man smiled gently. "Then today, you learned the true secret of wealth." He picked up a small seed from a jar on the shelf. "Money is like this seed," he said. "If you keep it in your pocket, nothing happens. If you plant it carefully, patiently, it multiplies." Elias looked at the seed in his hand. He suddenly understood. Wealth is not about how much you have, but what you do with what you have. He opened his notebook and wrote, "Plant what I receive." For the first time, Elias felt wealth was not far away. It was something he could grow with his own hands. That afternoon, Elias walked through the market with the coin in his pocket. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about what he could buy, but what he could build. He passed a stall where a young vendor struggled to organize his books. Many were damaged or dusty. Elias stopped and suddenly had an idea. He offered the vendor the coin. "In exchange," Elias said, "give me those old books no one wants. I'll clean them and help you sell them for a better price." The vendor agreed immediately. Elias returned to the bookshop carrying a small pile of worn books. The old man smiled proudly. "That," he said, "was your first investment. You used the coin not to consume, but to create value." Elias opened his notebook and wrote, "Invest in improvement." For the first time, he felt wealth beginning, not in his pocket, but in his mindset. Over the next days, Elias cleaned the old books, repaired their covers, and arranged them neatly. When he brought them back to the market, they sold quickly, faster than he expected. For the first time in his life, Elias earned money that he created, not money he waited for. When he returned to the bookshop, the old man looked at him with quiet pride. "You see now," he said, "the poor stay poor, not because of lack of money, but because of lack of mindset." Elias nodded. He finally understood. Wealth was not a mystery. It was a series of choices. Learn instead of complain. Build instead of blame. Invest instead of spend. Grow instead of wait. He opened his notebook and wrote the final line. "Riches begin the moment the mind stops being poor." And from that day forward, Elias walked through life with a new truth. He wasn't escaping poverty, he was stepping into purpose.